In an interview with Prog Sphere, Periphery guitarist Misha Mansoor talked about some of his favorite musicians, and Allan Holdsworth was brought up in the mix. This is what he said about him. Forgot Holdsworth and Guthrie, obviously. Guthrie, everything he's touched. Holdsworth, I don't love every song that Holdsworth has put out. It's a big debate between Holdsworth fans. He was then asked, how do you feel about the SynthAxe stuff? The SynthAxe stuff is not my favorite stuff by a long shot when he's playing guitar, but I do love songs off all his albums, and I get asked this all the time, but I don't know that I can pick a favorite. I listen to his entire catalog, but even though I don't love all his songs, I love the songs that I do so much that it's still the best thing ever. Holdsworth is just a game changer, and I was always intrigued by him. He said more about Holdsworth in an article with Lamb Goat, which they asked him to select 6 songs they'd be stranded with on an obligatory desert island. In this he picked an Allan Holdsworth song called The 16 Men of Ton. He said, I can't be stranded without some Holdsworth, and this song is one of my favorites. This song is also off of his album by the same name. Good vibes, and some of my absolute favorite lead playing over some absolutely awesome chord changes. It would have been this one or two, Leo, honestly, but I think this song has a slight edge. Tones are top notch too, won't wear my ears out.
Periphery guitar mastermind Misha Mansoor revealed that after over a decade of activity, 5 studio albums, and even a Grammy nomination, he still isn't able to make a living solely from his band, Periphery. He was asked, will there ever be a metal band that sells as many records as Metallica did? No. No one's selling any records anyways now. It's all gone. It's all disappeared. Make income outside of the band. This is what I do with the signature products. It's my way of being able to make a living. It's my way of being able to make a life for myself. People think sometimes Periphery is achieving a little bit of success. We're not a massive band, but we do alright. But we make no money. And people have a really hard time grasping that. Because even as we started making more money, you'll gross a lot and net nothing. The ability to monetize music has just dropped by a factor of God knows what, 10, 100, whatever. But the cost of touring has stayed the same. It just means that you net very little. And then if you want to have a nice production like us, you don't want to just go bare bones on everything. You want it to be an enjoyable show, so you spend money on that. So yeah, we'll gross a fair bit, but we won't net a lot. We did a 5-week tour in Europe last year, we walked away with nothing. And that's the reality of this. European tours are very expensive. US headliners will do pretty well, but you can't do them that often because everybody's touring. Oversaturated market, your guarantees will stagnate or go down. I'm 33, and as people start to get older, when I was in my 20s, I didn't mind sleeping on floors or whatever. Now I'm not gonna be doing tours while I'm slumming in a van. It's just not fun anymore. It's not worth it. We all paid our dues already. So it's just one of those things where for us music is just becoming more and more about just doing it for fun. But it's because we all saw this coming. We had no delusions. When I started the band, it was like I'm playing nerdy metal. No one cared about us at all. No one cared about this style of music. I would have been amazed to get even 100 people to come to the show. So it was like, I'm gonna need to figure out some other way to make a living. This is just gonna be for fun. And I think that is more true than ever now. Periphery guitarist Jake Bowen recently got a chance to discuss the gent style, branding it far too one-dimensional for his taste. Chatting with Metal Hammer, Jake said that the genre's main problem has to do with the fact that it was born on the internet. He noted, the whole gent thing, I would have embraced it a lot more had there been a bigger diversity in the music, but the problem with that whole thing was it was born on the internet. It really started with Meshuggah, and they had no idea that they were starting anything. They were doing what they do, and they're an incredible band, and no one can touch them or come close to sounding like them. But the actual bulk of the scene started on the internet. The guitarist continued, what I've noticed is that these bands that try to be gent only take 1 or 2 flavors from the sound and don't get the fact that it's way more dense than that. So you'll only hear 2 types of things happening in a lot of mediocre gent bands' music, and it's not engaging enough, and it sounds like everything else. I think that's the mistake that these gent bands are making. They're taking the groove aspect and the low-tuned riffing aspect, then putting some sort of clean guitar passage over it. Then they write 10 songs like that and call it an album. There's a lot more to it than that. Focusing on the backlash Periphery have received for changing their musical direction on their double album effort Juggernaut, Alpha and Juggernaut, Omega, to see an enraged fan burning his Periphery hoodie over it. Bowen noted, "It's happened to me too, man. It's happened to everybody." A perfect example is Metallica. They're never going back, they're never going to write another And Justice for All, but that's okay. They did exactly what they wanted to do. They changed their style, and they're happy about it. I don't think they have any regrets. It's just the way things work. I think people get varying degrees of frustrated about it. For me, I'm just like, alright, that was nice while it lasted, while other people are straight to the internet and commenting about how much we suck and how the first album was better. If any of us in Periphery put on the first album, we'd be like, turn it off. We don't want to listen to this anymore. We still play the old stuff occasionally on tour, but we are over it. We want new stuff. There's not a lot of sympathy for us that we have to do this stuff every night, it's expected. And we're happy to play it, we want to play it. I don't want to send a wrong idea, it's just after doing it for a certain amount of time, it's old stuff. It's like eating the same dinner every night, you want to try something else. Periphery guitarist Misha Mansoor talked with UG about writing guitar solos and what he personally thinks of them when it comes to his writing process, saying, "Solos were never my strength and they still aren't. Honestly, most of the time it felt like a chore, but sometimes they would come together. And when it would just come together in a nice way, that's when I would try to make them happen. When they would come together naturally and organically. But I was never the kind of person who felt the need to write solos, or like I needed to express myself through solos. It's still probably the most dreaded part of my set. I don't really enjoy playing them, and I don't really do a good job with them." UG said, "That's pretty remarkable to hear you say that, because the solo on Jetpacks was amazing. I don't know. I enjoy them from a compositional standpoint, but really their purpose is just to serve as another voice. To that end, most of them are things I'd want to be catchy sort of singing lines. Not necessarily saying a vocalist would or could sing, but something that has similar effect where it's memorable, and hopefully there are motifs in there or something like that. It's not really about shredding away for me. It's more about finding the right notes at the right time. It's one of those things John Petrucci really imparted to me, and then later on players like Guthrie Govan and Allan Holdsworth in his own weird way. That's sort of more my approach to it. But yeah, unfortunately I don't consider myself a very good soloist. It always just feels like a little bit of a chore." Periphery guitarist Mark Holcomb talked about the essence of heavy music and how being heavy has nothing to do with drop tunings, telling them in music. He said, "You can sound heavy in any tuning. To me, it's about intent. It's about writing, it's about the attitude of a riff, it's about what it embodies and how it comes across. And even lyrics. The lyrics can make a part seem heavy as balls. There's so many things, a freaking drum beat. A drum beat. If you put a straight 4 on the floor drum beat over New Groove, or the walk-off 2010's Periphery or something like that, it would be the least heavy thing ever. It's not about the riff, it's about everything coming together." Mark also talked about Periphery's approach to writing music, saying, "We like to do our writing together in a room. I'm saying me, and Misha, and Jake, the 3 guitar players. We'll sit down, and if Jake says, 'I've got this riff, check it out,' or Misha's like, 'Check out this riff,' and plays it. It's for Marigold. The first time I've heard that, I was like, oh god, this is going to be a sick song. But none of us said to each other, you know what would sound better? If we played it on the 8th string. None of us ever do that, because you start to lose the spontaneity and original sort of fire of the riff. The reasons that riff was crafted, that it just sort of sparked out of nowhere out of your head. It's an amalgamation of the tuning, the action on your guitar, your headspace, so once you start to swap out one of those variables, you could lose it. I can count on one hand the number of times, because we have done it, it'll either fail horribly, which happens more often than not, or it'll be successful. Periphery guitarist Misha Mansoor talked about how he sees himself as a guitarist, explaining to Tyler Larson that songwriting is his #1 priority. He asked, "Do you see yourself more as a rhythm or lead player?" Misha said, "I would say none of those, man. I think I'm more of like a composer. I think when I first started out I wanted to be like the best guitarist, just get my chops up and become the best guitarist. At that point, it was John Petrucci, that was the guy. And then you slowly learn that's not gonna happen. And then I just want to focus on having fun. And now guitar is like this kind of thing. I feel like I plateaued. I always work on my chops, but I'm not a technician. And there's a lot of people who have been playing for way less time than I am, who are way more talented. I see it more as a means to an end. I've got ideas in my head, and it's a very quick way to get those ideas to come out. And with the power of computers and all that stuff, you can straight out compose stuff. So I just see it as another tool to get sounds with, but I don't consider myself a good guitarist or anything like that. I don't think I ever will. I've kind of given up on that. It's really just something that I enjoy and that helps me write. In a recent episode of the Jasta Show, SUMERIAN Records label founder and CEO, Asha Vildson talked about the workings of a label, but also about progressive metal band, Periphery. Vildson confirmed that the band are no longer signed to SUMERIAN Records, who to date have put out all 5 of their full-length records, with the latest Periphery 3 Select difficulty. Vildson shares that, in his opinion, the band are their own worst enemy and need to be open to promoting and boosting their more single-worthy tracks more often than they do. Periphery and SUMERIAN Records have worked together for a long time. The band's entire discography to date is through the label, and along with bands such as Faceless, Born of Osiris, and Veil of Maya, they're the band that's most indicative of both SUMERIAN's overall vibe and meteoric rise to prominence. There is an undoubtedly close relationship between the success of the label and the band. So fans may be surprised to hear that not only are Periphery leaving SUMERIAN Records, but they appear to be doing so on non-terrific terms. Misha Mansoor recently said that the band needs other sources of income besides their music to make a living. This all seems kind of surprising, given how popular Periphery are, but then again not surprising at all, given the current state of the industry. For his part, Vildson asserts that the band could be making more money. He says, everyone is hustling, but fundamentally they need to have bigger streams and bigger ticket sales. He also claims that Periphery could be an arena band. Spencer Saletto has a voice, he can sing it. They did a great cover of Florence and the Machine, which really shows the depth of them. If they did want to write songs that could get on radio and big playlists, but they only write for themselves, period. Most artists will say I'm just playing music for myself, and what I say to that is, you can do that at home, but then don't worry about making that a living. Vildson finally said this, Misha, I love you to death brother, you're a superstar, but you get in your own way. Periphery was an instrumental band in helping grow SUMERIAN, and I'm so proud, so none of this is meant as a diss to them. They are incredible, but this is me being candid, record label guy talking about an artist I love who is very hard to A&R,